and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 2 and the last part in my Arizona Night series. And in this video we're going to go ahead and finish up the painting and add the moonlight and all the highlights and the old dead tree. We're using Infinite Painter for Android, and if you want to follow along with traditional materials, check out part 1 where I have a list of all the paint and brushes and the canvas that I use. And so we're going to go ahead and continue refining the formations of the Monument Valley shapes, and I'm just kind of working on the little shapes near the edge and trying to get the unique little look that the weathered chimneys that they call them chimneys, have in Monument Valley. And if you're following along with your traditional materials, you can use the round number 3 brush to sort of refine the edges, and you might want to use a mixture of dioxazine purple with a touch of ultramarine blue, add a little bit of white acrylic gesso there, and for the background ones you want to add quite a bit of white acrylic gesso, and then as you come forward you want the formations to actually look a little bit darker, and that gives it your aerial perspective. So here I'm just kind of working on adding a little bit of some features to the background formations. Now you don't have to get real detail, but you kind of just want to get sort of the suggestion that there's crevices and cracks, and that the rock is really weathered, and it's all old volcanic and weathered type rock, and so the wind and the water have eroded it and into these odd sticking up chimney-like shapes, and so you want to kind of give that look there, just because it's very unique, and that's what makes Monument Valley stand out from a lot of formations. So I'm just kind of adding a little bit of a darker color there. And you want to make sure that it's on the other formations there. And then here I went ahead and started adding some highlights from the moon. And what happened is I forgot to hit record. I do that a lot. But what I did is I took some white acrylic gesso, if you're following along traditionally, and added a touch of cadmium yellow light. And you just want kind of the same color as the moonlight, and just hit the outlines of the formations. And you want to do that in the background, not overpower them or anything, but just along the edges, just where the light is catching on the edges of the formations, you want to add a little bit of that moonlight glow. And you want to start adding it more on the flat as well, to get the look of the dunes and the sand dunes and the arroyos and all the formations that are out there in the flat. And you want it on the big formation here in the front. And then you might go back and add a little bit of some darker color here. And I like to use the filbert brush for this in Infinite Painter. And if you're following along traditionally, you can use your filbert or your number 6 flat. You can also use the dry brush to blend, and the dry brush in Infinite Painter to blend the moonlight a little bit. You don't want to leave it looking like lines. You want to blend it in and smudge it. And if you're following along traditionally, you'd use a paper towel or something to kind of just smudge it in a little bit. You don't want to kill all the light, but you want to kind of just soften the edges and not have hard lines yet. And so I'm just kind of trying to get the look of the sand dunes there, and maybe it's a little bit of a dry creek bed along there. So I'm just trying to get sort of that look there, and it will be bigger, and because it's coming towards the foreground, so objects in the foreground are going to be bigger than the ones in the background, and that gives you your perspective as well too. And so here I want to start on the old dead tree, and I'm putting it on a separate layer in Infinite Painter, because if you don't, you'll be sorry. Because if you mess up and you want to change it, then you have to go back and it'll mess up your background. Now, if you're doing this traditionally and you mess up, what do? Well, what you need to do is take a piece of chalk or charcoal and sketch the old dead tree in first, and make sure you get the shape really well and how you want it, and then you won't mess up. But if you do, just go back with some of the background color. The hardest part, of course, though, is matching those colors up. And as you see here, I went ahead and changed it because I didn't like the way that looked, and since it's on a separate layer, it worked pretty good in Infinite Painter. That's one of the advantages of digital painting over traditional painting, is that you can do that. But I wanted to go ahead and make it look a little bit shorter on that one side. And then here I'm taking some of the Moonlight color and just kind of sketching it in. Now make sure that you leave pockets of light and dark on even the tree stump, because it's going to have a rough texture, and so you don't want to just make it totally white, and because that just won't look right. And so you want to go ahead and smudge those on and just kind of put it on the edge there where the moonlight would be hitting it. So the light's coming from the moonlight on the right side, so that's your shadowed side is going to be on the left side for that tree. And you just have to kind of figure out where the moon's rays would go when it's sort of in the center there. And like the big formation, you see it's going to shine light on the left side of it, because that's where it is. It's on the right side of the moon. So you just kind of have to figure out where the rays would go. Just sort of chart them out. And here I'm just adding some more. I added some really jagged twigs on the end of the old dead tree to give it some character, I guess, and make it look kind of, you can make it look scary if you want to, or just unique and interesting. So here I'm just kind of adding back a little bit of the dark there, refining the old dead branches that are sticking out on it to make sure that they show up, because if they're against a lighter part there where I've got the moonlight shining on the flat, it might need to go back and sort of darken that. So I'm using some of the dark gray mixture, and you would probably use, if you're using your acrylics, dioxazine purple, ultramarine blue, and a little bit of burnt sienna, and that will gray it. And add some white acrylic gesso so that it's not black. But you want just a little bit of a dark gray color for the old dead tree. And then also show the moonlight, how it will hit at the bottom of the tree. And you want pockets of light and dark right there. And so I'm adding a little bit more of some gray at the bottom, just kind of softening that out, trying to get the texture of the bark there. And so I'm adding back rough strokes, and you can use your number 3 round or your script brush to do this if you're doing this traditionally. And just get kind of a thin, add some water to your paint so that it has an ink-like consistency, and then you can sort of add those rough strokes there and just kind of leave them. I'm adding a little bit more of the light again, And I'm just working back and forth, trying to get sort of a realistic bark texture on there. And I have my photo reference there, and of course it's daytime, but just kind of translate that into what moonlight would look like. And so that's what I'm trying to do there. And then we kind of need to add an eye stopper in the corner, and an eye stopper is something that keeps the viewer's eye on the canvas instead of wandering off. So I'm adding a little sort of a bush like they have in some of these pictures here. I'm not sure exactly what that vegetation is, but it's a desert type of a plant, and so I'm just adding it in a dark gray color and using some of the rough looking oil brushes like Old Glaze, and just kind of trying to get sort of a texture, a rough texture there to show the leaves of the plant, but not be overpowering. And then of course the moonlight's going to be hitting it some, so I've added some white twigs to it and a little bit of some light colored grass there. And you can use your script brush for that if you're following along traditionally. Also, you want to put a little bit in the corner on the left hand side, and some by the old dead tree, just to kind of give it some interest and make it like it's not floating, or just kind of settle it down onto the ground. And that just gives it just adds more interest to the painting when you add these little strands of grass. And then here I want to go ahead and playing around with this brush here to try to get a look like the plant leaves. And so I'm you can change the controls and just play around with them, and you can actually save your own brushes in Infinite Painter and all kinds of different things. And so I just wanted to add a little bit of some light color there to the leaves, but not make it overpowering. And then here I wanted to go ahead and sign my name and see if I'm through. Usually that means that I'm not through, but I'm getting close to being through. But this is when you shrink it down or take the step back from your canvas. And also, above all, save. Make sure that you save, because you don't want to lose all this hard work. And so here I'm just kind of doing a little bit more tweaking, and I decided I would change that shape just a little bit in the background. And you can do that because I put it on a separate layer in Infinite Painter. If you're doing this traditionally, try to match the background color a little bit. And I'm just kind of trying to smudge in a little bit more of the moonlight color on the top and just adjust the shape a little bit better and make it a little bit more refined. And then of course save it. And you can also add other things to this painting. If you want to, you can add in Native American pottery. I like to put a cocoa pelly in the sky sometimes. Like he's a spirit in the night, or some of the other type of spirits, sky spirits. I like to add those in. You can add whatever you want to this one, just to make it, to add a different spin to it, make it more supernatural if you want to. So this is the end of part 2 of my Arizona Night series. And stay tuned for a new series coming soon. And if you have any questions or any suggestions, just leave them in the comments down below and hit the subscribe button. And thanks everybody for watching, and thank you for your support. And I will catch you later.